Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I prefer to stand. This is my first time ever in Brazil, and I've had just a wonderful time. See how generous you people are? Isn't that great? I have eaten more steak in the past 3 days than in all of 2009 combined. And what's for dessert? I asked, and someone joked, well, it's steak ice cream, of course. Good grief. I had the good fortune of speaking at the inaugural event of Mises Institute Brazil, and I'm just flattered by my reception here. There were people in the audience who had read my book, Meltdown, in English. So here I was thinking maybe we needed a Portuguese translation. I guess not. You all speak such beautiful English, and I apologize. I don't speak a word of Portuguese. I apologize for that. But I hope the translation is working out all right. I'm going to speak somewhat more slowly than I usually do to make this easier for all of us. We're talking about inflation today. So we're not talking about rising prices, which are merely the result of inflation. We're talking about the increase in the money supply that brings about the rising prices. Ludwig von Mises was a heroic and inveterate foe of inflation. Inflation allows governments to avoid making difficult choices and surreptitiously to seize control over more and more of society's resources. How does it do that? Well, imagine what happens when you earn money for working. The money you earn comes to you because you provided a good or service. And that money entitles you to go back into the economy and claim your reward. Now imagine what happens when a counterfeiter prints money out of thin air. He goes into the economy for his reward, but he never contributed anything. And that's what governments do. They print money and they use it to seize resources from us without having contributed anything themselves. Now, it's very easy for economists to come out against inflation. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of people's money. It complicates profit calculations on the part of business. And indeed, it does much more than just this. But, there is always a but. We need a little inflation. We need to rob you a little in order to keep the economy running. Just a little thievery is all we need. The free market, we're told, needs a government monopoly institution to issue its monopoly money. This strikes me as a contradiction in terms. We're told otherwise we'll have falling prices. And oh my heavens, wouldn't you hate that? If prices fell, what would we do if prices fell? That would be terrible. I hate the fact that I can get a laptop computer now for half the price it was 3 years ago. Oh, I hate that. The economy is going to collapse. The money supply needs to be increased to keep pace with business activity. This is another fallacy. Any supply of money is adequate to facilitate any number of transactions as long as the value of the money is allowed to increase. Or we get told, inflation isn't really so high after all. What are you all worried about? We were told that we have lived through the so-called Great Moderation, in which we've had very little inflation, nothing to complain about. But people who told us this failed to take into account asset prices. Not just consumer prices, but asset prices. So at a time when housing prices skyrocketed and stock prices skyrocketed, we were told there's very little inflation. Inflation is always and everywhere, as Mises would argue, an insidious opponent of freedom. Joseph Schumpeter, one of the great 20th century economists, said that even if you accept all the phony arguments against a gold-based money, even if you accept those arguments, it is the only monetary system compatible with freedom. As I've said, inflation is a painless way for government to raise revenue. It doesn't have to raise taxes. It doesn't have to borrow and thereby increase interest rates. It can seize your resources without your knowledge. And it hopes you lack economic knowledge. It hopes you will blame the energy companies for the rise in energy prices. Or you'll blame the farmers for the rise in food prices. You'll blame anyone but the culprit himself. Would the United States be able to get away with its military interventions if the American people really felt the cost? But ladies and gentlemen, they don't. Most Americans think these wars are free. Their taxes have not risen. Interest rates have not risen. It seems free. It seems like a free video game they can watch on television. Do you think we will have more wars or fewer wars under such a system? The question answers itself. Then the problem of moral hazard. I don't know how well this translates, but if you've not heard this term, moral hazard, it refers to the phenomenon by which people become excessively and artificially willing to accept risks, absurd risks, because they expect that they will not have to bear the pain of loss. They can accept all the gains, all the profits, but if they lose, the general public will pay the tab. Well, what's the connection between this and inflation? Well, right now, the world suffers under fiat money, paper money that circulates as money because the government tells you it's money. This worthless piece of paper is money. We call it fiat money because just as God said, fiat lux, let there be light, governments are saying, let this crummy piece of paper be money. Since people in the financial sector know that there is no physical constraint on the creation of money, all it takes is ink and a printing press, and today, not even that, a few keystrokes on a computer. That's all it takes to increase the supply of money. You don't have to mine it out of a mine and wait 7 years for it to come out. You can print it, create it instantaneously. They become more risk-prone because they know that whatever amount of money is necessary to bail them out can be painlessly and instantaneously created by the monopoly paper money producer. Then we have the distribution effects of inflation. Some economists assume away all the most interesting aspects of the question by saying, let us imagine that the increase in the money supply occurs by means of a helicopter flying over the country, evenly distributing the new money on everyone. I assure you the chairman of the Federal Reserve System of the United States has no idea how to fly a helicopter. This is not how money is introduced. It is introduced into the economy at discrete points. And institutions and people who are politically well connected, who have access to the new money, they can spend that new money first before the new money